I see that my BMFcast cohorts were big fans of Synergy even before I arrived, and as such, the fourth movie they chose to do for the show is the Fantastic Four. Not one of the big budget ones though, but the unreleased Roger Corman version from the early to mid-90s. This is something I'd always been curious about, so after a bit of time, I was able to track down a bootleg copy, which is the only form this film is even available in, and I went to work. Not knowing the entire backstory of the production yet, I went into this thinking, well, just how bad could this be? Roger Corman has made some absolute dog shit, and it's all seen the light of day in one form or another, and as the opening credits played out, I thought this seemed legit so far. The credits are nicely produced and the music is both an original composition and suitably epic. Now, granted, credit sequences are easy. I make them to mask my terrible videos all the time, and they're usually the only thing that garners a mention in the comments below. So what we have here is an origin story of the Fantastic Four, naturally. Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom are friends and colleagues working to harness the power of something called Colossus, which, despite being an actual Marvel character I think, here just seems to be in the form of intense energy storms that appear every so often. Side note, how could you ever be friends or work with someone named Victor Von Doom? You know that's gonna end badly. Anyway, things go badly and Victor Von Doom becomes Dr. Doom, out to be bad and spread, doom. And while doing so, he, with some inadvertent help from some kind of underground-dwelling leprechaun, causes Reed Richards, along with his friends and colleagues Ben, Johnny, and Sue, to gain superpowers and ultimately become the Fantastic Four. After an adjustment period, the team bands together to defeat Dr. Doom. Now, I'm giving this version of the Fantastic Four 2 jocks. One is almost automatic. I mean, of course I'd recommend you watch the only Roger Corman movie made that never got released if you manage to track down a copy. It's a significant moment in B-movie history, and as such, it has a ridiculous backstory to go along with it. Now, the second jocks is because, well, honestly, this thing isn't that bad at all. Now, granted, that could be me coming into this with the mindset of, well, just how bad could it be? But look, I don't like any of the Fox Fantastic Four films, especially the most recent one, and this version is infinitely more entertaining than that. Hell, it's better than the handful of Roger Corman movies that were getting theatrical releases around this time, most notably Carnosaur, which I've reviewed before, and if you don't remember, it sucks. Things that help it along are the sincerity of the film's score, some of the makeup effects, most notably for The Thing, which is pretty impressive for such a low budget. The cast is all super on board with all of this, especially Joseph Culp as Dr. Doom, who is kind of fun when you can hear him.
Touch it, and she dies.
So?
I mean it.
Please, don't let me stop you.
The movie does get a little too silly around the time when the actual Fantastic Four uniforms show up, especially when characters end up getting married in them, but Corman's version of the Fantastic Four is perfectly fine, a ridiculous curiosity, and something worth at least one viewing. Now, it's time to go back and listen to what my colleagues thought of this. My assumption, based solely on how things went in these early episodes, is that they hated it. But let's find out. Okay, as this episode begins, Harlow insists that it was a happy accident that this film was chosen for the fourth episode. Sure it was, Harlow. Sure it was. They do like The Thing makeup effects and later get distracted that Police Academy 8 is in production for a 2011 release date. Harlow shares my recommendation for sheer curiosity, but mostly, yeah, they all hated it. BJ continues to be upset that there were no semi-trucks as characters in the film, a la The Wicker Man. And speaking of The Wicker Man, again, I feel if they revisited this film today, they'd like it a little better. Just a hunch. Aside from some problematic jokes along the way, hey, we were all still learning how to be better people around this time, this is a good episode and discussion. Now, while we're here, I want to mention the crowd-funded documentary called Doomed, the untold story of Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four. It's the type of comprehensive documentary you'd hope for on a subject like this, a feature-length look at the production with interviews from practically all of the cast and much of the crew. Basically, the only side not represented here is from Stan Lee, who is only seen in some archive footage. The documentary goes into great lengths about the production, with a lot of behind-the-scenes footage included, and the cast, while jovial, was rightly pissed that they made an entire movie that they then found out later wouldn't get released, and probably was never planned on being released. Strangely, when the documentary veers into the territory of why it never got released, it seems to skip a step, going from point A to point C, while leaving a gap of information unsaid, which ends up requiring some catch-up. Suddenly everyone's talking about Chris Columbus this and Chris Columbus that, while never mentioning why they're talking about Chris Columbus. It does explain how that leprechaun fellow was probably supposed to be the Mole Man, but just because they had the rights to the Fantastic Four didn't mean they have the rights to the entire Fantastic Four universe of characters. So they changed it to a weird leprechaun. And of course, when they get to the casting part of the documentary, we get the usual assortment of famous people who didn't get the part, including one illustrious BMFcast alum.
For the role of Ben Grimm, we read Patrick Warburton.
The documentary is available on Blu-ray, and as of this recording, is streaming on Amazon Prime. It's definitely recommended even if you've never seen and have no intentions of seeing the film it's about. My hopes, though, are that one day the Corman production ends up seeing the light of day, officially. There'd be very little cost involved, I think. Hell, that cheap-ass wig they slapped on Kate Mara's head for the reshoots of that last Fantastic Four movie probably cost more.